Evening, everybody. Okay, let's go. So, it was about this time 4 years ago that I had a monumentally rubbish day at work. I don't actually remember the details, but what I remember was that the diary was in its usual chaos, and when I wasn't in a meeting, there was 16 decisions that I needed to make, and that actually I probably should have made them 3 days ago. What I remember was that actually I was mentally exhausted. And I don't know about you, but when I'm mentally exhausted, I generally sit on the sofa, I open up Twitter, and I just sift through my timeline. And on my timeline that day, my friends were talking about a podcast. And this stuck in my head because on Twitter, you don't see people talking about audio. TV documentaries, yes. Films, yes. Question time, kill me now. But audio, not so much. But what my friends were obsessed by was a podcast called Serial. How many of you here have listened to Serial? Excellent. How many of you have no idea what I'm talking about? Excellent. Well, for you guys, Serial, certainly season 1 of Serial, is the story of Adnan Syed. He's a man currently serving life in prison for killing his high school girlfriend. Only trouble is, you could drive a bus through the evidence that was used to convict him. Serial, in 12 parts, goes through that evidence, and then basically they don't leave any stone unturned. My Twitter feed was absolutely compelled by it. I was curious. I clicked play, and it was good. It was mesmerizingly good. Here was a story that was brilliantly told. It was written for the ear. It was delivered by a presenter who completely understood that this was something that needed to be, that this was basically a relationship between listener and the person doing it. And it's also brilliant journalism too, because actually in a couple of weeks' time, there's going to be a retrial, and they're going to go over everything again. So I binged. I literally listened on the way home from work. I listened at weekends. I actually listened on the way to work when I should have been listening to the news. Now, that's a problem for me. Which sounds ridiculous because we live in a free country and we've got our own free time, and unless there's a civil war over Brexit. But even then, to be honest with you, I can't imagine the revolutionaries are going to crack down on true crime podcast listening as one of their first priorities. But it was a problem for me because I had to start making excuses in work. I was missing things. I was actually telling people little white lies. It was a problem for me because actually I ran a radio station. I was paid good money to listen to something else, and that something else was the output that I'd actually commissioned. And this was a radio station that was on air for 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, which technically meant that actually there were 4 hours a day I could listen to something else. But those 4 hours came between 1 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know about you, but I'm relatively conservative about my sleep patterns. So I had to listen when I should have probably been listening to my own radio station. And it led to some slight awkward conversations in the corridor. Have you heard my show? Not yet. Which was my way of saying I probably won't catch up with it now because I'm just falling behind with my listening. But the one thing that was happening, the one thing that Serial was doing for me and all the other podcasts that were building up on my iPhone was it was completely changing the way that I was consuming radio. And it changed forever. It meant I was in control. It meant that actually I could listen to whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And I knew I wasn't on my own, and I am not on my own to this day. Right now, there are 7 million of us in the UK who are listening to podcasts every week. That's up 1 million on this time last year. And Google reckon they're going to double that number over the course of the next few years. We are truly the Netflix generation of podcasts, of radio listening. And actually, it is something that people are literally taking back control. And it worked for me. I'm no podcasting hipster. You know, I picked Serial. I picked The Popular Girl in the iTunes chart, frankly, to listen to. It was getting 10 million downloads. But did it change my life? Absolutely, because I'd worked for that radio station and that organisation for 22 years. Since 1998. I was 22 when I started taking out a pension, when I started paying into my pension. I'd still be there now, and I'd still be a lifer if Serial hadn't have come into my life. In 2017, I left that organisation. I set up my own company, making podcasts. We haven't made a Serial yet, but that's the ambition, to change someone's life the way that Serial changed mine. Thank you very much.